Hi, Year 11. Today we're going to continue on with our Japan case study, and we're going to be starting at this dot point in the syllabus around the existence of group identity and commitment to cultural continuity. Now, continuity is an important topic that will take us through to the HSC course around things staying the same. And continuity is just as important as change in a lot of societies because continuity helps to connect us to the past and helps to create our sense of identity, and particularly in Japan, this idea of group identity because of their collectivist nature. So let's start with some definitions. Identity. Identity is all about the sense of self and can be viewed from the personal, social, and cultural levels. And we looked at identity a lot in our last topic around personal social identity. I hope you will remember that identity is formed over a long period of time, particularly during adolescent years, and really through interactions at the micro, meso, and macro levels of society. Aspects that contribute to somebody's identity might be their gender, sexuality, family, class, ethnicity, all those socialization agents we talked about last term. An additional one that really relates to Japan is this idea of social status, group membership, and national pride. Because group identity comes from your sense of belonging to a particular group, which normally involves having pride of that group and a real understanding of your place within that group. We've talked a little bit about this already, but this is just a refresher. Individualist cultures, such as the US, emphasize personal achievement. Collectivist cultures, such as Japan, emphasize on group goals and group achievement. And that's why group identity is so important, because you have to know what the identity of the group is, to understand where you fit and what your place is within that group. Problems with collectivist culture is that people can pervade these cultures and they just kind of follow along with them, and it's very easy to form that groupthink or sheep mentality because people don't question the status quo because they're afraid of causing someone offense, or they're afraid of stepping out from where they should be. Individualist cultures also have their failings too. Individualist cultures are much more susceptible to loneliness, whereas people in collectivist cultures are so afraid of rejection that they're always part of a group. We're starting to see a real increase in individualist cultures exist, particularly in developing countries, which means we're able to connection between wealth and individualism. The idea that as soon as money starts to be involved, people get these real capitalist ideologies and they kind of want to fend for themselves a little bit more, each for their own sort of a thing. Whereas collectivism is still very strong in Japan, which is quite a unique situation. Many aspects that help to form a culture's national identity. A lot of these relate to nationalist myths that kind of narrate real events that have happened within a culture, but might have fictitious elements to try and enforce a moral or a value. Japan has a long history of things like samurai fighters. They have a long history of specialized dress and ceremony, of specific food, and we're going to look at a couple of them now. Japan is quite a homogenous race, which means that they have a very shared ethnicity and language across all of their islands. So even though they have thousands of islands that cross different geographic temperaments, they all share a very common idea and a common identity. One festival that contributes to national identity is New Year's Eve in Japan. So we're going to watch a quick clip about what that looks like.
正月, or the New Year, is the biggest holiday in Japan. We don't do much for Christmas, and in fact, we don't even get off of work for it. But we'll have between 1 to 2 weeks of vacation during the New Year. This time of year, traditionally, we decorate with mochi, a sticky rice cake. We stack 2 on top of each other, and then put a dai-dai orange or mikan on top. This is called kagami mochi, and it's a traditional offering to Shinto gods. For families who grow their own mochi rice, they often make the mochi for kagami mochi themselves. Rachel and I made some with my uncle last year. This holiday is important for families, and most people will spend it with their parents. On New Year's morning, we eat zoni, which is a mochi soup, and osechi. Osechi is made of many small portions of various foods that are each considered good luck. On New Year's Day, shrines and temples will be very busy. We traditionally visit multiple shrines and temples to pray. Large shrines may even have small festivals with yatai, or food stalls, outside. This year, our shrine was so busy that the line to pray carved around half the shrine's perimeter. And since we are not religious enough to stand in line in the snow for 40 minutes, we gave up and went home. Many people also travel and visit their relatives with their families. This year, Rachel and I went with my family to visit my aunt and uncle, where we had a feast with sukiyaki and osechi, and watched New Year television. There is a famous TV program on New Year's Day that shows many famous people doing funny and ridiculous things every year. For example, MasterChef replicate dead-life items with food, and then place them in a room with real items, and people we call talento or talent have to guess which ones are food by trying to eat them. These things aren't a tradition, but they're an entertaining part of New Year's Day. We also visited my grandpa, aunt, and my uncles on the other side of my family the next night, and had another feast, this time with sushi and fried foods. Another part of a new year is cards that you buy at the post office called nengajo. These are special postcards that you send to your friends and acquaintances. And the Japanese postal system works incredibly hard and attempts to deliver every single one on January 1st. These cards are extra special because each one has a letter number on the bottom. So for every nengajo you receive, you have a chance to win various prizes from the post office. These used to be things like TVs or free trips, but these days it's cash. This year, they will announce the winners on January 18th. I hope we win. It may not sound as fun as Christmas since we don't get presents, but kids actually get something called otoshidama, which is money given to them by their relatives. It can be anywhere from about $10 to $100 from each relative for families with normal income. I used to spend all my otoshidama on books, but now that I'm an adult, I don't get it anymore. If my sister has kids one day, I'll have to give them otoshidama, so I hope she never gets married. Anyway, thank you for watching about our New Year's haul.
So that was just a quick overview about how Japan celebrates New Year's Eve and some of the traditions that help to gain or create national identity. Things like that card giving system, the national lotto for the prizes that people get, the shared food and community that people have with their families are all part of formal national identity and something that everybody does together at the same time of year. Your first bit of due work for today is on the slide, and there are 2 questions that you need to answer. Another important aspect of creating and maintaining group identity is through clothing, and Japan loves their uniforms. Uniforms have been a really important part of their culture to denote what group or what social group, what job you have. Some of the uniforms are very out there and creative, some of them are much more formal. And we have a very big range of uniforms that exist, even down things to like the kimono that the geishas originally wore. And this is a very big nod to continuity and something that has existed in Japanese culture for a long, long time. So clothing acts as a way to identify different groups. And historically, the samurai and the geisha could be identified through their elaborate costumes. The first kimono originates at about 300 CE and was worn by men and women. Western dress became much more practical, obviously, from about the 1850s, but kimonos are still a significant part of Japanese culture, and it's often something tourists expect to see when they go to Japan, and they'll pay to go to a tea ceremony run by a authentic geisha in the full kimono dress. So let's have a little look at what a kimono actually entails.
Let's begin.
see from that video, the kimono is definitely something that requires a lot of commitment if you want to actually wear it. And it is now almost considered quite a symbol of class, because training to become a geisha is quite a long process. And a geisha really is like a hostess. They would host businessmen or people going out for like a tea ceremony, and they would provide entertainment and service for these customers. And now it is very much a tourist-driven industry where people, tourists go to experience a traditional form of Japanese culture. So again, an aspect of continuity. Another aspect of social identity in Japan is a youth subculture called Harajuku. And subculture is a culture that kind of breaks off, that is different to the larger conform culture of the group. So Japan as a whole is very conservative, but this subculture of Harajuku for the youths is very, very out there. It's very eccentric and eclectic, and is a way for Japanese young people to really display their individuality. And it's all about dressing in what lots of people will consider sort of a stereotypical Japanese style, using lots of color and lots of accessories. And it's very about having a non-conformity period for Japanese youths as they kind of grow up. So this is a map of Tokyo, and Harajuku is actually a district of Tokyo, and this is where the subculture originally began. I'm going to get you to pause me now and go back to Schoolbox and watch a short video about Harajuku and then come back to me. So I hope you found that video interesting. Looking at all the different, I guess, fashion is quite exciting for me. Your second piece of due work for today is here. Explain the continued importance of the role of fashion in creating group identity in Japanese culture. Use specific examples in your answer. That could be from the kimono right through to the Harajuku culture. Last thing we're going to look at for this lesson is gender in Japan. This is a photo of the Japan National Cabinet for 2019, and as you can see, we're a bit light on women. In Japan, there's a specific term for a businessman. It translates roughly to salaryman, but there is no word that exists for a businesswoman. In Japan, rather, they're office ladies, indicated by the roles of copying, making tea or cleaning the kitchen, things like that. It's quite unusual for women to be at the top of their fields in Japan because there is still quite a patriarchal society that exists, where men are considered the ones that go out and provide for the family, and women have more of a submissive role. There's a little example on the screen I'd like you to read about a woman's experience in her job hunting. I'm sure some of you are quite surprised by that, and it is something that definitely wouldn't be allowed in Australia. If you went to a job interview and your employer asked if you planned on having a baby, you'd be able to sue them under the Anti-Discrimination Act. But in Japan, it's considered a fairly reasonable question because they want to promote their business. They're quite a, I guess, competitive business environment, and they don't like the idea of perhaps a weaker sex pulling them down or holding them back. Japan's uniform culture can also work against women with high career ambitions. There are no specific career clothes for women, the way that men would kind of have a suit. And I guess that kind of applies in Australia, but suits for women are much more common here. In Japan, women's clothing is much more feminine, and so it kind of really contrasts them to their male counterparts in their suits. Further gender differences are also found in the Japanese language itself. For example, husband in Japanese is shujin, which means master or owner of the house, while wife is suma, meaning in the house. Therefore, the husband owns the house and the wife works within it. There are also more words that males can use to describe themselves, whereas females have more limited words. So again, it's quite a patriarchal language where men seem to take precedence over women. In English, in Australia, that doesn't really seem to be the case quite so much when it comes to our language features. Although people would argue that there are more male connotations, anyone that's seen Legally Blonde would know about the semester-ovester argument. Last thing I'd like you to do for today is to watch these 3 clips that I've uploaded to our Schoolbox due work, and we will talk about them next lesson. I hope you found some of the things we've done today interesting. Don't forget to submit your due work to Schoolbox, and I will see you tomorrow.